Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. And, let me begin, Mr. Chairman, by saying I very much share your view with respect to consultation with this committee. That was actually embedded in the law. More consultation, and more transparency was actually embedded in the law in 2015. So I want to make it clear I share the chairman's view on that point. The committee meets this morning to discuss the administration's trade agenda. First, China. The president likes to say, and I quote here, "Trade wars are good and they're easy to win. The situation on the battlefield says otherwise. China's market is now more closed off to American goods and American agriculture than before the trade war began. The president's next escalation will directly raise the cost of everyday goods in America, and the president is signaling that he'll betray our national security and let Huawei off the hook if China helps him save face." Now, there's no question that confronting the Chinese trade ripoffs was long overdue. The Chinese government and state-owned enterprises have gotten away with strong-arming American businesses, stealing our intellectual property, and undercutting American jobs for way too long. It has to be handled differently. Rather than chaos, what's needed is a well-coordinated international effort led by the United States to crack down on the Chinese abuses. Instead, the president has driven away our allies, and it's not clear there's a discernible strategy to go forward. Now, some have attempted to focus our efforts directly where China is coming after our strength: highly technical manufacturing and innovation. The Ambassador Lighthizer, deserves credit for laying out this type of approach to the committee in the past. Unfortunately, those plans get knocked off course all too often by hailstorms of tweets sent while the president is watching television in the morning. As a result of this mismanagement on trade, the American people are faced with the prospect that everyday life in our country will be more expensive and less secure. The next round of tariffs the president is considering would drive up the cost of consumer goods sitting on shelves around the nation by as much as 25%. Millions and millions of American families are going to begin back-to-school shopping in a matter of weeks. School uniforms, gym clothes, sneakers, book bags, pencils, notebooks, you name it. With new tariffs in place, mom and dad might discover what they budgeted only goes 80% as far as they expected. And then there's the issue of Huawei. Huawei poses a genuine spying risk to the United States and our allies. Allowing its equipment to be used in our telecommunications infrastructure would compromise our security. That's the opinion of national security experts outside the government and in key federal agencies. Even the president seemed to get it. At a recent White House event, he said of Huawei, and I quote, "You look at what they've done from a national security standpoint, from a military standpoint, it's very dangerous." But in the president's next sentence, he said, and I quote, "It's possible that Huawei even would be included in some kind of a trade deal." So basically, right out in the open, we've got members of the Intelligence Committee here, right out in the open, the president is telling China's spy masters that he's willing to give away America's national security for a face-saving trade deal. This isn't an academic concern, it's a real threat. But rather than holding our national security interests paramount, the president seems most interested in the splashy trade headlines. I'm going to close with a couple of quick comments about the Western Hemisphere. I've long said that NAFTA was a product of a different economic era, and it's time for an overhaul. The president campaigned on ripping up existing trade deals, but the new NAFTA sure resembles the old one. That said, there are areas of meaningful progress. It goes further than before on digital trade and state-owned enterprises. It takes a modernized approach to customs and duty evasion. And again, I'd like to commend Ambassador Lighthizer for obtaining some strong outcomes in the labor and environmental chapters. Yet when it comes to trade enforcement, the enforcement of our trade laws, there is sure some heavy lifting left to be done. Commitments from other countries aren't any good if there's no way of holding those countries to them. The new NAFTA retains a weak enforcement system from the old NAFTA, which too often gave a free ride to the trade chiefs. That's a bad deal for our workers, particularly the enforcement of labor obligations. Now, Senator Brown, our colleague from Ohio, and I have offered some solutions. I'm hopeful and optimistic that with some bipartisan work and that kind of blueprint, those are issues that can be resolved. In the meantime, there is no way to justify pulling out of the current NAFTA, since doing so would accomplish nothing except economic pain here at home. So I look forward to discussing these issues and more with the ambassador this morning. I thank him for joining the committee. And this is an important hearing, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate your scheduling it.